Welcome to the Deep End number 254. This is August 9th, 2022. Still no flying cars. Actually, there are flying cars, but they're not practical. You know, Irenaeus once said that the true glory of God is a human being fully alive. And for me, and for all of life, in all its forms, there is one overriding intent, and that is to grow, to become more, to flower, to fruit, to reseed the process. Jung used to say when someone would come in and say their whole life was falling apart, he'd go, "Oh, today we're not going to have a therapy session. We're going to get some champagne. Let's toast that. Something is here that is going to allow you to grow." Now, according to a lot of therapists, we each have this capacity to actually hang out on our growing edge, our growth edge. And if you go to Growth Edge, growthedgetherapy.com, which is a pretty cool site that links you to a bunch of cool stuff, they define growth edge, and these are therapists, as a dangerous opportunity where we get to learn how to be more vulnerable in our lives. We've talked a whole lot about, life has changed. There's no way to avoid it. Actually, there's a whole lot of ways to avoid it, but none of them work. We've also talked about the differentiation, complexification, and semi-permeability of everything since the beginning that has caused evolution and development and all these iterations. What this growing edge allows us is to broaden the bandwidth of our semi-permeability, to become more vulnerable, to dare to feel more deeply. And this isn't just an intellectual thing where we change our minds. This is a whole change of behaviors and the way we approach ourselves. If things have stayed the same in your life and you got a good pattern there, something needs to change. Maybe you don't see it yet. And there's a whole lot of little indicators, and I love these. For me, my phobias, they really show me where I need to work, and I don't really want to. The facing depression and your phobias and your anxieties, learning how to feel feelings, opening up to grief, becoming more authentic, wrestling with perfection, managing frustration, taming the inner critic, becoming more assertive, developing healthy boundaries, developing intimacy, dealing with uncertainty, healing trauma. All of these things are indicators of a growing edge, and they're not comfortable. Let's face it. We've talked about discomfort of uncertainty and the mystery over and over. And I'll be honest, today my anxiety is in politics for the loss of our republic. I'm really afraid about that, and it's caused me to change my behaviors. I just went to a fundraiser. I'm in a progressive state, so the Senate stuff is pretty locked down. But our local representative, our county commissioners, our city council, I went to a fundraiser. Now, I'm not into fundraisers. I don't like them, although when I got there, I liked it. I got to see the growing edge of a young person going for county commissioner, Amber Waldref. If you're in Spokane, seriously, she is a sane alternative, and she's not in cahoots with the moneyed interest, which is a whole other issue we could talk about. Growing edge, it causes us to change not just in our heads, but our behavior. And so I want to talk about growing edges today. I want to talk about this place where we experience discomfort, but there are these possibilities. And it's interesting that the therapist site calls them dangerous opportunities. They're not comfortable. There's a lot of iffiness in them in terms of their outcomes. This over and over. We've talked about the change again, over and over, the change. And what we're talking about is change management. Managing your change in a way that is, puts you in the driver's seat, if you will, and not the forces around you. So today we're talking about this growing edge, this growth edge. And Marianne, we'll start with you. What say you?
Well, I think that change is inevitable, and we can either choose to accept that and go along with it, or we can fight against it. But I think that there are things that we can do within our own lives to help facilitate change. And some of them are very simple. It's just opening ourselves up to another perspective, to outside influences, and to listen, to read, to be aware of what's going on outside of our own little bubble, our own little world, and it's going to affect us. So I think that, again, it's inevitable. So how do we want to manage it, I think, is the question.
Well, and one of the interesting pieces about a growing edge is it really is outside our comfort zone. We live in these little bubbles, and they really are comfortable. Comfort and convenience.
Some of them are. Some of them are not so comfortable.
But enough of them are that it's left a lot of people on the other side of change and not willing to change. They hang out in their anxieties and let their phobias run their lives instead of seeing them as another dragon to slay, if you will.
Right.
And over, I mean, that's been my journey. I've lived most of my life in an uncomfortable place, and a lot of people have said, "Why do you do that?" And I say, "Because that's where I'm growing, man. I just keep crawling to that place that keeps opening me up to something new." And to be honest, one of the challenges I think is it is outside our comfort zone, and most people spend most of their time maintaining their comfort zone. So, amen, Marianne. Bob, what say you on this?
Well, I agree with Marianne that change is inevitable. And I'm afraid that, given the stage of life I'm in, I'm going to kind of be a Debbie Downer when it comes to the growing edge, because last couple of years I've been striving to close down the windows of my selective or semi-permeability, because really the world is going too fast for me right now. And I feel like this is the time in my life where I'm just kind of trying to ease along. So I don't know if I have a lot to contribute to this topic today.
Amen. And, I think that's the battle for me too, Bob, is, I keep going back to Hinduism and Buddhism, where old age is a time of opening up. It's a time of eclectic learning, if you will, in their lives, and it's a life stage. And I think our culture does set us up to withdraw into a place that feels safe and insulation. But I don't think that's what life is calling us to be. Go ahead, Marianne.
I was going to say, and I think as we get older, I think we're called to go within more and pass that external baton to the younger generation. And as we go within more, we can gain new insights into how we see the world and how and what we can still contribute and pass on to that next generation coming up. So I think there's validity in both of those things.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think it's not an either or, but a both and.
Right.
And I do think, I agree with you, Bob. There's a whole lot of external stuff that I was caught up in that I don't give a flying anything about anymore. And I'm very glad to let go of them. But there's some things that still pull on me and move me outside my comfort zone. I've got a letter to the editor that I do not want to write, but something in me says I've got to have to write it, and I go, oh, damn. And I think that's part of the discernment process in this part of life, is how to sort that out and not allow yourself to just become inert, but to still be an active ingredient in the community, if you will. But, it gets into Dharma too, so.
Well, it also gets into the situation you find yourself in, and what you can do or want to do. For me personally, participating in the deep end here is extending myself way beyond, the comfort zone, if you will, in terms of thoughts and so forth. Although, because of my age and situation, my physical actions are a lot less than they used to be.
Yeah, I hear that. I sure don't go to as many protests, but I sure write a lot more checks. It's an interesting place. But this growing edge, and I want to invite our listeners to look at their lives and really look at this place called the growing edge. And I agree with Irenaeus. He was a 3rd century guy. He actually got excommunicated 2 or 3 times because he was upsetting the church fathers even back then. But the whole glory of God being a human being fully alive, I think that's an important thing. And one of the themes that we continue to kind of harp on here is the place of understanding what constitutes health and wholeness and moving more fully towards that. And that's not easy. That is dealing with anxieties. That is dealing with feelings. And I'll be honest, with old age, Bob, there's a lot of anxieties that are not really connected to anything other than one's own mortality, which are cause for reflection. But I think that giving people an invitation and permission to move out of their comfort zones needs to be a part of our culture. It needs to be a part of the adventure of living, if you will. That the adventure is not there at home base. Home base is a great place to return to. I mean, even in the Bible, Jesus has R&R all over the place. He returned to the Sea of Galilee to relax. He returned to Mount something to relax with his disciples and just sit around a fire and chat and have some wine. Over and over, we need to find a place in our culture and in our stories that allow us all and invites us to go to that place that we form healthy boundaries, where we develop a more healthy sense of intimacy, where we tame our inner critic, which, I'll be honest, I've been working on that one my whole life. that sucker is not shutting up. Go ahead,
See,
Bob.
I worry about what's happening with our education system, where not only are we not challenging young people to move beyond their comfort zone, but they're trying to codify comfort zones, and they're not allowing teachers to open the children up to new ideas. And that is a very, very scary thing to me, because most of my life has been striving to find new ideas, to find a way to integrate new ideas into my worldview. And I think that's the thing that has to start at a very young age. That idea of curiosity, that idea of not knowing all the answers and having a desire to strive for new ones. And that's really the essence of school, and I'm afraid of what's happening today with the schools.
Amen.
Well, I think that's a good point, because we need those outside perspectives. We need people that think different than we do. That's why travel is so important, and people that can get out and understand that the way you live, the way you were raised, what you're taught, and if the schools are all teaching one homogeneous idea of thought to create a single thinking way of being in the world, then that is dangerous, and it doesn't allow people to really know that there's a choice, that there's a different way to look at the world that is just as valid as the way you may be looking at it, or even more valid. And I think that's where opening ourselves up to But books, I mean, books are so important. If you can't travel, getting other ideas besides what yours are. Out of curiosity. I think somebody mentioned the word curiosity, and I think that is so important. Be curious about the world.
And I think you what I've heard both of you say, and the first one is so disheartening, is Bob, the cultural codification of our comfort zone. Holy crapola. and how critical thinking is anxiety inducing. And we're trying to get rid of that anxiety. We think we can lead, pain-free lives. In the 19th century, they thought they could lead sex-free lives. And, in the 20th century, it was pain. And I wonder if the 21st century now it's anxiety. You know what I mean? We've got the right medications. We've got the right distractions. We've got the right bubbles with TV and entertainment. We don't have to pay attention to anything outside our bubble. And this is why it takes a concerted choice to move outside one's comfort zone. Now, it doesn't always need a choice. People, grief is a great example of being thrown into a different world. For me, going into the military was like, holy crap, these people are different than what I was. Bob and I went to Hammond High School. It was mostly white. I think there were 2 black people in there, and 85% of us went to college. It was just such a different place. And when you get in the military, one guy got married because his wife was his girl was pregnant, and then she gave birth to a black child. So he's in the military running. Another guy was in a menage a trois, and they didn't know how to deal with it. So one joined the Air Force, one joined the Navy, and the other joined the Coast Guard. I'm going, what the hell? My reality got broken up. And then you put, psychedelics on top of that, and it's like, holy mackerel. So I feel like my dharma, the path and the intent of my being, has always pushed me to this place that's not comfortable. I don't like it because it holds me responsible to do stuff. And, I don't want to be responsible, I guess is what it comes down to. Someone asked me what my greatest fear was. It's of success. I don't want to necessarily succeed because then I got to manage the damn thing. That's kind of been my my underlying unconscious thing that I have to keep looking at and move into that space. And there's still parts of me that are I've got projects all over the place, and I want to be successful, but my comfort zone just doesn't want me to go there. So,
well, it comes with a lot of responsibility.
That's right. And I think that that's part of the journey, is oscillating in and out of that place. I'm reading this book on Robert E. Lee. I have to literally sit down and say, I'm going to be uncomfortable for the next hour when I find out what my hero was doing. So, Growing Edge. Go ahead, Marianne.
Well, I was going to say, I can distinctly remember the first time when I realized not everyone was raised the same as I was. And I was probably, I was probably about 20, 21, and I was traveling around the States and meeting people from all over. And it was an awakening to, there are other ways to be in the world. And I think just knowing that has informed me ever since.
Well, and one of the things I said in my opening remark is that all life wants more. And it just seems to me, I'm a gardener. It wants to go to seed. It wants to drop the seeds and grow new life, new flower, new fruit. And I think what I'm talking about, we've talked about living in accord. How do we create a paradigm that allows us to go to our growing edge and experience the anxiety, the discomfort, and still have, the support, if you will. And Bob, you said something at the beginning, the cultural codification of the comfort zone. We have all the support to make ourselves numb, to make ourselves insulated, to make ourselves, and we're perfectly, as one guy said, I'm living the American dream. My question to him was, which one?
Dream or nightmare, right?
Well, I think we're going into a very difficult time, and I think we're going to have to go outside our comfort zone in order to address some of the issues that are starting to confront us. And one of the things that you both have intoned is critical thinking it's not comfortable.
Or we come back to the basics. I think we've gotten so far off track in the way we talk to each other, the way we treat each other, the way we've separated into different groups. And so how do we come back together and find what is going to be beneficial for all of us for the most? And that does take change.
And now we're back to stories.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Bob.
Well, I agree with the whole idea of the stories, but I think what has to happen is a new kind of power distribution has to happen. We just had our Senate pass this tax on corporations that make over $1 billion in profit, and these are corporations who paid no income tax at all in the last, several years. And still the opponents of that are saying, oh, you're raising taxes. This is terrible. You're raising taxes. But it's the power distribution. We're raising taxes on the powerful so that the less powerful can have a better life. And that power distribution is something that is the real fight, I think, or one of the big fights in the next century. The haves and the have-nots.
Yeah, and it's the same fight that we fought before.
Yes, it's just that the have-nots had no power at all.
Well, the whole New Deal was the whole New Deal. It was, balancing out those power structures.
And I want to share with our listeners that literally, you can see the challenge at the political growing edge of those who want to maintain the status quo, which is basically you tax the hell out of the little guy and you let the big guys have lots of tax breaks. And it has always been a battle in this country. Again, I remind you of a letter that I read from Washington to Jefferson, while Jefferson, I believe, was vice president, and he said the republic is already being threatened by the moneyed interests. You can see the battle between the moneyed interests and the we the people. Now, I'm an independent. I left the Democratic Party because it was so much bullcrap. In the 70s, it was just amazing. It was like auto manufacturers. There were 22 layers of management between me and my congressman. It was just insane. I didn't want anything to do with it. I can honestly say that there is a demarcation now of the tomorrow people and the yesterday people and how that battle is happening. And all you have to do is turn on CNN or, I'll just say CNN, turn on Fox and MSNBC, and you can see the great divide. It's quite amazing when you think about it, and it hurts like hell when I see that it's my grandchildren, my children, the future of who we are. Go ahead, Bob.
But the big danger is the divide is no longer on political issues. The divide is on truth versus fiction. And a too large a segment of our population has bought into the idea that I'm going to accept this fiction because I don't want anything to do with the people who have different ideas, and that is so dangerous. You know, it's I don't know how communication happens then. I don't know when you're looking for a growing edge, and people are so adamant that there is no such thing as a growing edge.
Yeah.
You know, how do you get through to them?
Well, and again,
maybe
the therapists talk about a dangerous opportunity. We are literally at the junction of a dangerous opportunity. And
we have to find the right tricks.
And, you know, what did John Quincy Adams says? Whoever tells the best story wins. I think that, it's a paradigm. It's a battle of paradigms. It's you know, if you go to our episode on paradigm shift, it's moving from content to context. Seeing that content can't be valued by itself. It has to be valued within the context in which it occurs. And those are very different ways of thinking. And that's part of the growing edge of the human family right now. You see a huge contraction in just about every democratic republic on the planet. And those who aren't democratic republics are contracting further into fascism and totalitarianism. And it comes from fear. It comes from anxiety. It comes from an uncertain future that we somehow must feel at home with. These are big, things we need to prescribe to. And to do that, we're going to need someone who can speak it, and an orator. And I don't know who that is, because they don't just need to speak it. They also need to be a son of a bitch and a horse's ass in the name of the human family. And I hope that there's people now being bred to do that. Maybe they're children now. I don't know. So, growing edge, we dance around it because for each of us to find our growing edge, we got to go somewhere that we don't always want to go. But our country is going somewhere that many of us do not want it to go. The world is going in a direction that many of us don't want it to go, because it's not based on wholeness and health. It's based on small, narrow bandwidths of understanding that are provisionally set up to allow a less than great number of people to be comfortable. So we're at the end of growing edge. Bob, what say you as a final comment?
Well, I think you made a good point about fear being this tool that keeps people from exploring their growing edge. And I think that what we have to realize, or what we have to help people realize, is that the thing that they fear is going to actually be fed by that fear, so that their inaction is bringing about the very things that they're afraid of. And you can look at climate change as a great example of that. If we had not been afraid to make the tough decisions 50 years ago, we wouldn't be seeing the floods in Kentucky that we're seeing today. We wouldn't be seeing the fires in California. So the idea of being afraid to move forward is going to guarantee that we are going to be facing those. We're going to be overcome by those fears rather than actually facing them.
Amen. Mary Ann, final comments?
Yeah, I think that's a good point, and all of us are responsible for where we are right now, and what the outside forces are doing are having us point a finger at somebody else and saying it's their fault, when we all have to come back and change the way we're thinking. As you guys were talking, I kept thinking about generational trauma and how we repeat it within families. Well, we repeat it within our nation as well. And we keep doing the same thing over and over again. And in order to get out of this, we have to change the way we're thinking and the way we're approaching. It has to be brand new. I think, wasn't it Einstein that said, you can't solve the problems with the same level of thinking that created the problem. And so how do we shift that? How do we change that? I think that's the big question. And opening ourselves up to new ideas and new ways of thinking and new ways of being is necessary right now, or we're going to just destroy ourselves.
And maybe that is what kind of has to happen. I hate to say it, is maybe we need to get there again. So power distribution, life distribution, distribution of resources which are limited, at least on some level. Energy is not limited. We're figuring that out. There's an unlimited amount of energy. But what we've got on the planet today and the human story is planetary power struggles, planetary politics. You know, I've been looking at what's called geopolitical areas, and each area of the planet has its own geopolitics. There's like a different way of thinking. The Middle East is different than the Far East with China and all that. Eastern European has its own unique problems that are sucking the rest of Europe into it. Over and over, we see that the human story, is like Marianne says, keeps repeating itself. And the way that it resolves, I'm going to be honest, it's one group kicking the other group's ass and then implementing their way of thinking. I don't care if it's Genghis Khan or the United States and the Marshall Plan. That's the way it's happened in the past. And to be honest, you go back and listen to our show on war. We got to get rid of that. Because conflict, as Marianne just said, we could destroy ourselves now. Yep, we're going to touch it. Planetary politics, power, in our next podcast. Till then, may the blessings of life be all over you and open you to new ways of thinking.